You are probably better at trading than you were 6 months ago. And that is exactly what I am worried about. Not because improvement is bad. Improvement is the whole point. But there is a specific period in a trader's development, a period that almost everyone passes through, that nobody warns you about, and that the industry has absolutely no financial incentive to discuss, where a little improvement becomes the most dangerous thing that can happen to your account. It is the period when you know just enough to feel certain. You have been at this for a while now. You have studied, you have practiced, you have had some wins, real wins, not flukes, wins where the setup played out exactly as you analyzed it and the trade moved cleanly in your direction. You have started to see the market differently. The patterns that were invisible 6 months ago are visible now. The language of price action is beginning to make sense. You have a system, you have rules, you have, for the first time, the feeling that you understand what you are doing. That feeling is the trap. Not because your improvement is false, it is real, but because in trading, a little knowledge does not make you a little dangerous. It makes you maximally dangerous to yourself, to your account, to the future version of you who is going to have to rebuild from whatever the current version of you is about to do. In 1999, 2 psychologists at Cornell University published a paper that described this exact phenomenon with clinical precision. They gave it a name. They mapped it. They showed, across dozens of experiments, across every domain they tested, that the least competent people in any field were consistently the most confident, and, more importantly, that a small amount of learning produced not proportional confidence, but a spike of confidence so large it dwarfed the actual competence behind it. They called it the Dunning-Kruger Effect. And 2,000 years before that paper was published, a Roman philosopher named Seneca had already diagnosed the same problem, named its cause, and written down the exact practice required to move through it. Today, I'm going to show you both, where you are on the curve, why it is dangerous, and the 3 Stoic practices that will move you through the valley and on to the slope where real competence is actually built. Stay with me, because by the end, the confidence you feel about your trading will either be confirmed as earned or revealed as something far more fragile than you thought. Either way, you need to know. His name is Alex. He is 29 years old. He has been trading the Forex market for 8 months. In months 1 and 2, he knew almost nothing, and he knew that he knew almost nothing. He traded very small. He lost small amounts and absorbed them as tuition. He read voraciously. He was genuinely humble, not performed humility, the real thing, because the gap between what he knew and what the market demanded was too obvious to ignore. By month 5, something had shifted. The reading had accumulated. The screen time had accumulated. He had started to see things in the charts that he had not been able to see before. Supply and demand levels that held. Momentum shifts he could identify before they played out. He had 3 consecutive profitable months, not large profits, but consistent ones, and consistency felt like proof. He increased his position size. He began posting analysis in his trading group. He started answering questions that other traders were asking, because the answers felt obvious to him now. He had, in his own quiet estimation, figured it out. Month 7 was bad. Month 8 was worse. The same setups that had worked in months 3, 4, and 5 stopped working. Or more precisely, he stopped executing them correctly, because the confidence of months 3 through 5 had changed how he traded. He was over-trading. He was moving stops. He was entering positions that did not quite meet his criteria, because his criteria had become, in his mind, more of a general guideline than a hard rule. By the end of month 8, the 3 months of careful gains were completely erased, and Alex was sitting at his desk in a state of genuine bewilderment, not anger, confusion, because he was doing the same things, the same system, the same pairs. What had changed? What had changed was where he was on the curve. In 1999, David Dunning and Justin Kruger published their paper, Unskilled and Unaware of It, in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. Their core finding was this: people who are incompetent in a given domain suffer a dual burden. Not only do they perform poorly, they also lack the cognitive tools required to recognize how poorly they are performing. Incompetence, they found, is self-concealing. But the research did not stop there. What Dunning and Kruger also mapped, and what is perhaps even more relevant to trading, is the shape of the confidence curve across the entire learning journey. At the very beginning, a person has very little knowledge and very little confidence. They know they do not know. This is uncomfortable, but it is safe. The person in genuine ignorance is unlikely to bet large, unlikely to override their rules, unlikely to assume they understand something the market is doing. Then, with a small amount of learning, with the first patterns recognized, with the first wins that felt like proof of skill, confidence shoots upward, dramatically, disproportionately. The person now knows a little, and that little feels like a lot. The curve spikes to its highest point. Dunning and Kruger called this point the peak of Mount Stupid, the place where minimum knowledge meets maximum confidence. Alex, in month 5, was at the peak. He did not feel like he was at the peak. He felt like he had arrived. That's exactly what the peak feels like. Eventually, reality arrives. The market does what it always does to people who mistake the peak for the summit. It corrects, and the correction doesn't just cost money. It collapses the story a trader has been telling themselves about their own ability. This is the valley of despair. Confidence doesn't just fall, it craters. Many traders exit here. The gap between expectation and reality is too painful to sit with. Those who stay, who remain in the valley long enough to do the real work, begin the slow, patient, unglamorous climb toward genuine competence. Dunning and Kruger called this the slope of enlightenment. Confidence rebuilds, but differently, earned rather than assumed, specific rather than general. The confidence of someone who knows exactly what their edge is and exactly where it ends. 4 points on the curve, and the question is not whether you will pass through them. You will. The question is how long you will spend at the peak before the valley corrects you, and whether, when the valley arrives, you will use it.
Lucius Annaeus Seneca was born around 4 BC in what is now Spain, and spent most of his adult life at the center of Roman power. He was a philosopher, a playwright, a statesman, and for a period the most influential advisor in the empire, as tutor and later counselor to the Emperor Nero. He was also, by any measure, one of the wealthiest private citizens in Rome, a man who wrote extensively about the corruption of wealth while owning multiple villas and a considerable fortune. This apparent contradiction was something Seneca acknowledged directly and often. He was not interested in presenting himself as a sage. He was interested in the daily, imperfect, uncomfortable work of becoming less foolish. And what made his writings survive 2,000 years was the ferocity of his self-honesty. He did not write about wisdom from the vantage point of someone who had achieved it. He wrote about it from the trench of someone still struggling toward it. In one of his letters to his friend Lucilius, he wrote something that I want you to hold next to the Dunning-Kruger curve and look at carefully.
It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is truly dangerous, and what is truly dangerous is not what most people fear. What is truly dangerous? Not the losing trade, not the bad month, not the drawdown. What is truly dangerous, Seneca argued throughout his letters, is false confidence, the state of believing you understand something that you do not yet understand. Because a person who knows they are ignorant will approach the market with caution. A person who believes they are competent when they are not will approach it with the loosened stops, the oversized positions, and the abandoned rules of someone who feels that the rules no longer fully apply to them. Seneca identified 3 stages of philosophical development that map onto the Dunning-Kruger curve with a precision that is almost unsettling given the 2,000 years between them. The first stage, the person who thinks they know. They have had success. They have built an identity around that success. Their confidence has outrun their competence, and they cannot see this because the very skill required to see it, accurate self-assessment, is the skill they have not yet developed. This is the peak. The second stage, the person who knows they do not know. They have been corrected by reality. The gap is now visible. They are in the valley. And Seneca said something surprising about this stage. He called it progress, not failure, not defeat, progress. Because you cannot be taught something you already believe you know. The peak had made Alex unteachable. The valley has made him teachable again. The third stage, the person who has done the slow, daily work of building genuine understanding, who has been consistently humiliated by the complexity of the subject and responded not by defending their ego, but by absorbing the lesson, whose confidence is now earned, specific, and calibrated against actual evidence of their own performance. And his prescription for moving from the first stage to the third, his answer to the question of how you actually do the work, was contained in a single line he returned to repeatedly throughout the letters. The first step towards wisdom is to know that you are not wise. Not as a performance of humility, not as self-criticism or self-doubt, as an accurate assessment of where you actually are on the curve. Because the moment you can see the peak for what it is, a dangerous illusion produced by just enough knowledge to feel certain, you have already begun the descent into the valley. And the valley, for all its discomfort, is the only path to the slope. Let me make this concrete, because the Dunning-Kruger curve is not an abstraction. It is not a psychological theory that exists in a lab. It is a sequence of specific, recognizable behaviors that appear in trading journals, in account statements, and in the decisions traders make when real money is moving in real time. Here is what each stage actually looks like. Stage 1. The beginner's fog. The beginner's fog is the period of genuine acknowledged ignorance. You do not know what a supply and demand zone is. You do not know the difference between a trending and ranging environment. You do not know what you do not know, but you know that the amount you do not know is vast and that the market is indifferent to your uncertainty. And paradoxically, this makes the beginner's fog the safest stage of the entire curve, because in genuine ignorance you are unlikely to bet large, you are unlikely to override your stop-loss, you are unlikely to post trade calls in forums because the gap between what you know and what the market demands is too obvious to enable that kind of confidence. The danger here is not overconfidence, it is premature surrender. The fog can feel so overwhelming that some people exit before they have given themselves enough time to move through it. But for those who stay, the fog is protective. Enjoy it while it lasts, because what comes next is far more seductive and far more costly. Stage 2. The peak of Mount Stupid. The peak has a specific feel that every trader who has been there will recognize immediately.
You have learned enough to start seeing patterns. You have had enough wins to believe the patterns are real and that you are the reason for them. You have built a story, coherent, internally consistent, and grounded in real observations about why you are getting results and why those results will continue. The story is wrong, not because the observations are false, because the sample is too small, the market conditions that produced the wins may not persist, and the skills that generated those wins are not yet deep enough to survive the full range of conditions the market will eventually present. Here is what the peak produces in trading accounts specifically. Position sizes increase because the edge feels proven and pressing it feels rational. Respect for the stop-loss loosens because the setups have been working and a tight stop feels like it is limiting the winners. More trades appear in the journal because the eye that sees patterns has become overactive and begins finding setups where the evidence is thin. Each of these behaviors feels like skill from inside the peak. Increased sizing feels like appropriate confidence in a demonstrated edge. Loose stops feel like experienced judgment about market noise. Extra trades feel like an active, engaged approach to the market. They are actually the systematic removal of guardrails from an account at the exact moment it is about to be tested by conditions the trader has not yet encountered. Seneca wrote, "It is not that I am brave, it is that I know what is truly dangerous." The peak is dangerous precisely because it does not feel dangerous. It feels like arrival, like the hard part is behind you. The market has seen this before, millions of times. The Valley of Despair. The Valley of Despair is where most retail traders exit the game entirely, and I want to be direct about why, because the exit is not irrational. The valley is genuinely painful, not just financially, psychologically. What the valley destroys is not just the account balance, it destroys the story. The trader who was posting analysis 3 months ago and feeling the quiet confidence of someone who has figured something out now has to confront the gap between that story and what the actual performance data says. That confrontation is the most uncomfortable experience trading produces, more uncomfortable in many ways than a single large loss, because a single large loss can be explained. The valley cannot be explained away. Alex, in month 7, is not just worried about the money. He's questioning whether the intelligence that serves him well in the rest of his life, where cause and effect are clear and mastery is legible, actually transfers into an environment as complex and probabilistic as the Forex market. Whether the 3 profitable months were skill or luck, whether he is capable of this at all. These are good questions. They are the questions that the peak would not allow him to ask. The valley is asking them on his behalf. Seneca said something directly to the person in the valley that I want you to sit with. Ad aspera, through difficulty. Not around it, not away from it, not by finding a new strategy that skips the hard part, through it. The valley is not evidence that trading isn't for you. It is evidence that you are now capable of learning from the market in a way that the peak made impossible. The valley has made Alex teachable. The question is what he does with that.
Stage 4. The slope of enlightenment. The slope of enlightenment is the quietest stage on the entire curve. There is no peak moment, no revelation, no single trade that confirms the transformation has happened. It is built slowly, in the daily discipline of people who have been wrong often enough to stop being surprised by wrongness, and who have learned to use it. The trader on the slope trades less, not more. They are harder to excite. They do not post analysis in forums because they have learned that certainty about market direction is a signal of ignorance, not skill. They journal not to record wins, but to track the accuracy of their own thinking. They study their losses not to explain them away, but to understand them. Their confidence is different in character from the confidence on the peak. The peak's confidence is loud and general. The slope's confidence is quiet and specific. Not, I know what this market is going to do, but I know what I am going to do when this market presents certain conditions, and I know what I am going to do when those conditions are absent. That is a completely different kind of knowing, and it is the only kind that survives contact with the market over the long term. Seneca was not a theorist, he was a practitioner. He wrote to Lucilius not as a professor composing treatises, but as a man doing the daily work and reporting honestly on what he found. The practices he described were the ones he actually used, and 3 of them, adapted directly for trading, are the most reliable route I know from the peak of Mount Stupid to the slope of enlightenment. Practice 1. The Honest Post-Trade Audit. Seneca wrote, "Every day acquire something that will fortify you against poverty, against death, indeed against other misfortunes as well. And after you have run over many thoughts, select one to be thoroughly digested that day." One thing, thoroughly digested, not 100 lessons extracted from a single session, one honest question answered without the protection of ego. The Honest Post-Trade Audit works like this. After every losing trade, not every trade, just the losers, before you look at another chart, before you check what the pair did after your exit, before you discuss the trade with anyone, you answer one question in your journal. Was I right for the right reason or right for the wrong reason? This question cuts through the most seductive form of false learning in trading. The winning trade taken for a bad reason, entered on a gut feeling that happened to work, oversized because confidence was high, taken without a proper setup but in the right direction by chance, teaches you nothing useful. Worse, it reinforces the wrong lesson. It provides evidence for the story that your judgment is sound, when in fact it was luck dressed as judgment. It inflates the peak. The losing trade taken for the right reason is pure information. It tells you that your edge, properly applied, failed on this occasion, which is expected because all edges fail on some occasions. It confirms the process, even as it costs you money. It is the most honest feedback the market can give you. The losing trade taken for the wrong reason is the most expensive lesson available and the most important one to examine without flinching, because that trade came from the peak, from the confidence that outran the competence, and seeing it clearly, naming it specifically, writing it down honestly, is the first movement toward the valley. And the valley, as we have established, is where the real work begins. Write the honest answer, not the comfortable answer. Over time, this audit builds the most valuable thing a trader can have, an accurate internal map of where their actual edge begins and where it ends. Practice 2, the Calibration Review. This practice comes from Seneca's concept of the ongoing philosophical audit, the regular, structured examination of the gap between what you believe and what you can actually demonstrate. Once a month, not more often because the sample needs to be large enough to be meaningful, you sit down with your complete trading journal and answer 4 specific questions. Question 1. What did I predict the market would do this month, and what did it actually do? Not trade by trade, broadly. Did I correctly read the environment, the direction, the character of price action? This tests the accuracy of your macro analysis against the record of what actually happened. Question 2. Where was my analysis accurate and where was I consistently wrong? Not individual trades, patterns. Is there a session, a currency pair, a setup type, a market condition where your results are systematically poor? That systematic poor performance is the precise edge of your actual competence. That is where the map ends and the territory begins. That is where the peak lives. Question 3. What did I believe I was capable of at the start of this month, and what does the actual data say about my capability? This is the Dunning-Kruger question stated directly, the honest comparison between the confidence you felt and the performance the journal produced. If confidence exceeded performance, you are at the peak. If they were roughly aligned, you are on the slope. if performance exceeded confidence, if you doubted yourself and traded well anyway, you are deeper into genuine competence than you know. Question 4. What is the one thing I was most wrong about this month? One thing, the most wrong. Write it down with specificity, not "I was too emotional." That is not an answer, it is an avoidance. I consistently moved my stop loss on the euro-dollar when price came within 5 pips of it, turning planned 2% losses into 5 and 6% losses on 4 separate occasions this month. That is honest. That is the beginning of a correction. Seneca wrote, "The first step to wisdom is to know that you are not wise." The calibration review is the monthly practice of turning that principle into a general statement, into a specific, actionable self-knowledge. It is the practice that makes the curve visible, and once the curve is visible, you can navigate it.
Practice 3. The Seneca Mentor Test. This final practice is drawn from one of Seneca's most direct pieces of advice in the letters. He wrote, "Associate with those who will make a better man of you. Welcome those who can profit you." The Seneca Mentor Test applies this to the specific problem of trading beliefs that have not been properly tested. Here is how it works. Take any strong belief you currently hold about your trading, any belief that you act on regularly and that feels like established knowledge rather than hypothesis. It might be, "This setup has a higher win rate in the London session," or "I can identify momentum shifts on the 5-minute chart before they become visible on the hourly," or "My entries at key round numbers outperform my entries at other levels." Now, imagine the most rigorous, demanding, evidence-focused mentor you can conceive. Someone who does not flatter, someone who respects data and has no emotional investment in your feelings about your own ability. Someone who has seen every version of trading self-deception that exists and is specifically immune to all of them. Present your belief to that mentor, not as a statement, as a hypothesis awaiting test. And ask the question that Dunning-Kruger research shows most traders at the peak cannot honestly answer. What evidence would convince me that this belief is wrong? If you cannot answer that question, if there's no data, no sequence of outcomes, no piece of market evidence that would cause you to revise the belief, then you are not holding a trading edge. You are holding a conviction. And convictions in trading are among the most expensive things a person can carry. Every genuine trading edge can be described in terms of when it works and when it does not. Every real competence has known boundaries. The Seneca Mentor Test is the practice of finding those boundaries before the market finds them for you, at your expense. The test does something specific to your relationship with the peak. It converts each held belief from settled knowledge to active hypothesis, and active hypotheses are tested. Tested hypotheses either survive the test and become stronger, or fail it and become information. Either outcome is productive. Neither outcome is possible if you are still on the peak, where the beliefs feel too certain to require testing.
Let me tell you where Alex is now. Not at the top of the slope of enlightenment, looking back with peaceful wisdom at the fool he used to be. That is not how this works. That is not how any of this ever works. Alex is in the valley, still, and he has made a decision, quiet, deliberate, without drama, to stop treating the valley as an emergency to be escaped and start treating it as the terrain to be understood. He has cut his position size in half, not because he cannot afford to trade larger, because the calibration review showed him in his own data, in his own handwriting, that his edge at this stage of his development does not justify the size he was trading. He is now paying for information about himself with an amount of money he has consciously decided he can afford to spend on that education. He has stopped posting in his trading group, not from shame, because he recognizes that the urge to post was always more about identity than about value. It was the peak speaking, the version of him that needed to be seen as having figured it out. That version has been corrected. He does not need to eulogize it. He has started the calibration review. Last month, it revealed something both humbling and useful. His directional analysis on the daily time frame was accurate 71% of the time. His entry timing on the 15-minute chart was producing results that would be better explained by randomness than by skill. That discovery, specific, honest, data-based, is worth more to his trading career than every course he has purchased combined, because it tells him exactly where to work and exactly where to stop assuming. He is doing the honest post-trade audit after every loss. It is uncomfortable in the way that honest self-examination is always uncomfortable. It shows him things about his own decision-making that he would prefer not to see. He does it anyway, because Seneca was right. Knowing that you are not wise is the beginning of wisdom. And the audit is the practice that keeps that knowledge fresh, session after session, so that the peak does not quietly rebuild itself while he is not looking. He does not know if he is going to make it. The valley offers no guarantees. The slope is earned session by session through the slow accumulation of honest self-knowledge applied consistently over time. There is no moment where it becomes easy. But there is something he has now that he did not have at the peak. Something more durable than the confidence he felt in month 5, when the account was green and the forum posts were flowing and the story felt airtight. He knows what he does not know. Seneca wrote this to Lucilius near the end of his own life, looking back on decades of the work. I have been keeping an inventory of my faults. I find it profitable to both note them and to report them to someone. Keeping an inventory of faults, not achievements, not wins, not the evidence of skill. Faults, the specific, located, precisely described places where the confidence exceeds the competence, the exact coordinates on the curve where the map ends. That inventory, maintained honestly, without self-punishment but without self-flattery, updated every session, reviewed every month, is the slope of enlightenment. There is no shortcut to it. There is no course that sells it. There is no indicator that produces it. It is built through the slow, unglamorous discipline of knowing yourself more accurately tomorrow than you knew yourself today. You are probably better at trading than you were 6 months ago. Now ask yourself the harder question. Are you better at knowing where your edge ends? Because that is the question that separates the trader who survives the curve from the one who gets corrected by it repeatedly, at full cost, for as long as they stay in the game. The peak is not your enemy. It is a stage, one that every trader who has ever built a profitable career has passed through. The question is not whether you will stand on it. The question is whether you will recognize it before the market corrects you, or after. I will see you in the next one. The first step towards wisdom is to know that you are not wise. Seneca.